On today's show, the NBA draft day one came and went, but did anything matter? We'll tell you on today's Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome. You are locked on to the NBA. My name is Nick Angstadt, host of the Locked On Mavericks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for being part of the show, making Locked On NBA your first listen today. With the best way you can help us grow the show is to listen every day on any podcast platform, like the video on YouTube, and comment anything below. Let us know, did anything matter? Name one thing. Name one thing that mattered tonight from the first day of the NBA draft. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use that code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. And joining me, as always, on a Thursday from Locked On Bulls, they did something that probably matters. What you got for me, Pat, the designer?
The Bulls did something good. this is two moves in a row that are good. That's all I got. I mean, it was fun. I'm having a good night. AK should not be in front of microphones either.
Questionable that first one, though.
Horrible press conferences, but
and now here to actually help us out here, because the draft expert himself from Locked On NBA Big Board, Richard Stayman, aka Mavs Draft. What you got for me?
You know, it's different being here on the East Coast now doing draft night. It's not as fun when it runs past almost 1 a.m.
Hey, at least you didn't have a second round too. They lowered it. They only did first round. So we'll talk about the first round. We'll talk about the things that matter. We'll talk about the Deni Avdija trade for the Wizards, and we'll talk about the Wizards' 3 first-round picks in one of the worst drafts we've seen in a while. They had 3 first-round picks. They just couldn't get enough of this draft. We'll also play Count It Up, where we count out the most interesting, fun things in the NBA, including OG Anunoby got every last dollar the Knicks had. Is he worth it? And then Rob Pelinka may have told the truth, may have not told the truth. And John Morant just continues to capture our hearts with an Instagram post that is killing me right now. But let's start here, gentlemen. Let's start with the draft. Let's go big picture. Let's go look at the whole draft, first round, up and down. The moves that were made, everything. Did anything that happened tonight matter? The big picture of the NBA draft. Did one thing, because you look at the top of the draft. I look at Zaccharie Risacher. Like, Richard, is he ever going to make an all-star team, an all-NBA team? I think one of our Locked On NBA hosts called him Trevor Ariza, or like for Trevor Ariza or earlier today. Like, is this draft going to matter? Big picture in the NBA.
And the Risacher pick, it screamed he's going to stick in the NBA for a while. He's going to probably be a 4th or 5th starter, but in a bad draft, you're just trying to get somebody that sticks. I think the impact was felt really in the second half of the draft, where you got teams like Denver and the Celtics and the Lakers that all got day one contributors that they're trying to get far in the NBA playoffs again. For some, I mean, the Celtics getting Shireman. We're going to talk about that as one of the biggest steals, I think, in the next 2 years.
So you like the Shireman pick for the Celtics. Give me one other pick where you're like, that guy will contribute day one to one of these potential playoff teams.
Oh, Deron Holmes. I think he's going to be everything they hoped Zeke Naji would be for years. And he's going to be much better than any best version of Naji, too.
Yeah, Deron Holmes, the big man out of Dayton that the Denver Nuggets got. They traded with the Phoenix Suns and got that pick, so they bring him in. Pat, was there any moves that you thought that like moved the NBA big picture that actually will affect what we see on the court next year?
I thought Minnesota came away with an absolute steal getting Terrence Shannon Jr. that late. I think that will affect how that team continues to move going into next season, because you just get a kid who's already got the right mindset going to a team that's already in a position to win. That's the thing about it. You're getting a young man who I think makes an impact on a court. The second he steps on a court, spent more time in college. He already knows his game. There's some things he needs to improve on at the NBA level for sure. More consistency from the 3-point line and things like that you add. But you're pairing him up with a Anthony Edwards. I think you got him the perfect running mate that you could get him. And the fact that you were able to get that at 20, let me double check, they were 27 in the draft. I don't think there was much left on the board that answered a lot of the questions that Minnesota was looking to answer. I think they had a phenomenal draft.
What are the favorite moves of this draft? Is there any that stand out to you? Guys that could potentially be all-stars, guys that could potentially rise up and could any teams, did anybody bet on a talent that you go, oh man, this guy could really rise and become an all-star type talent and really pop? We look back at the 2013 draft and it was kind of looked at like this one too. Anthony Bennett goes number 1, Victor Oladipo, maybe the best player in that draft at the time of the draft. And then all of a sudden Giannis pops. Richard, is there a player like that could pop in that kind of way?
I mean, Rob Dillingham's got the upside. Him and Anthony Edwards could one day be one of the top scoring punchers in the entire league. Yeah. But if I had to go with another one, I would say in the lottery, especially, this is my favorite, is Bub Carrington to Washington. I mean, that's a team where he has unlimited freedom. He's a smart young player, one of the youngest players in the draft, still 18 years old, runs a really good pick and roll. And I think that was just a fantastic pick personally.
Yeah, we'll get into some of the Wizards picks because they made 3 picks and they got Sarr at number 2. They got Bub Carrington. They got Keyshawn George. So we'll talk about them. And then their Deni Avdija trade that Brandon Scott of Locked On Wizards didn't like, but I don't know. I kind of like that move for them. To me, I'm looking at Reed Shepherd 3 for the Rockets. A number 3 pick. They drafted him, and I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna lie. It's like, what was that guy in middle school last year? Like the way he got up to it was a young there was a lot of people walking up there that it was like, is he legal? Like, can he actually be in the NBA draft this year? And Richard, correct me if I'm wrong, he didn't start a game for Kentucky last year.
I believe you are correct. He was one of the best 6 men of all time, I would say, for a freshman. He started a few, actually. I think he started when a couple guys were hurt or just random games throughout the year, but it was very few. Like, he was definitely the best 6 man in the entire conference.
But they do get the best shooter in the draft, so they're betting on upside for that one too, which I think is an interesting one. The Donovan Clingan, Zach Edey goes 7 and 9. Clingan goes to the Blazers. Zach Edey goes to the Grizzlies. Pat, which one do you think is a better fit?
I think Clingan to the Blazers is a great fit for the future of that team, but I don't know what it is now because we don't know what any of the answers are for the Blazers right now. The one thing that you guys know, I haven't been very high on Zach Edey, but the thing is, Zach Edey's going to a team that will allow him, hey, you know what we need you to do? Be big, grab rebounds, throw the basketball back out. Now you get an opportunity to actually play Jaren Jackson Jr. at the 4 spot. That's where he's the most comfortable. The one thing that we know is he's not a center. He will tell you that he's not a center. He knows going into the game, I got 5 fouls for you. Here we go. So I think that realistically, that to me is even as low on Edey as I am, that to me is the one that I think sticks out the most because with the team that they're returning with, I think it gives you the most opportunity.
Richard, were you surprised that Edey went as high as he did?
Not really. Everything I heard when I was at the combine was he's going to be a lottery lock. I didn't know top 10. That was a little bit surprising. I thought maybe he was a sneaky candidate for Sacramento, but I agree with Pat though. I mean, I think he fits very well, and same thing with Clingan too.
Yeah, it'll be. What do we think the Blazers do with Ayton now? They bring Clingan in. Do they just play them together? They try a 2 towers approach, or
they just wait till a snowstorm hits and let them That's all I assume they do. And I don't know, like DeAndre Ayton, it didn't feel like he really played for the Blazers last year, did it? He
got numbers, he got buckets.
I mean, yeah. At the end of the day, the numbers.
He was dominating in garbage time.
It never feels like he's really wanted to be a part of Portland. It just seemed like that was the team that got him out of there. As far as draft stock goes, I would say his stock's probably the lowest that you've seen it in his NBA career. Even though he's still getting buckets, you don't know if people believe in the work ethic or want to deal with the headache.
Richard, quickly here, worst pick in the first round so far.
This is a no-brainer for me. AJ Johnson to the Bucks. I did not have him with the draftable grade.
Thank you.
And that was
not a not a draftable grade. You have him out of the second round, even.
Yeah, he's too raw. He's a point guard size, a little bit, slightly better than a point guard size. 6'4", 6'8" wingspan. Doesn't shoot. Not a point guard. I'm very out. I think even his 99 percentile most attainable ceiling, it's not worth the first round pick. And you're a team that's tight on money. You're giving him guaranteed money to just sit. Like if you're Damian Lillard and Giannis, you have to ask the Bucks, how are we getting better? You have to now. This puts so much more pressure. They have the 3rd pick tomorrow. This puts so much more pressure on the Milwaukee ownership and front office to make a right pick at 33.
I didn't understand how everything has been around. We got to move Blake Griffin. We got to find a way to get Blake Griffin out of here. I'm sorry, not Blake Griffin. Brooke Lopez. I don't know why I said Blake Griffin. I
thought I was time traveling for
past the prime. You know what I mean? We got to move.
We're watching Clipped again. Like
we got to. I saw Nick's face. He's like, Blake Griffin. Sorry, I was joking about Clipped with Hayes, and it all runs together. I'm tired. But no,
Brooke can play Blake.
You talked about all of these things on what you're trying to do with Brooke Lopez. How do you not go out and go get a guy like Kyle Filipowski, who at a minimum, can block shots and can shoot threes? Like you went out and got great value Marjan Beauchamp, who's already a great value player on your team.
There you go. That's the worst picks that I don't know if anything really moved the needle at all, but a trade was made for a guy that has a lot of upside. That's Deni Avdija, who is younger than some of the players in this draft. Deni Avdija. We'll talk about that trade and why did the Wizards make either a good deal or a bad deal. We'll talk about that and more coming up. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app and you can go to concerts, comedy shows, theater, all kinds of stuff this summer, and especially sports. If you want to go to a game, I just bought tickets. I'm going to go visit my family in Cincinnati for a Reds game, and I went and got my tickets at Game Time. And I went, I saw my seats before I bought the tickets. I could see my view from my seat. I could look around, and that was cool to be able to see what's next to me, what vendors and stuff are near, if there's something in the way, if it's a obstructed view. And I got to use the all-in pricing. So you toggle the all-in feature and it'll show you what the price is for what you're buying at the very front. So you don't just get surprised by all kinds of feeds and things like that. They also have priority last-minute deals. Save up to 60% off buying last-minute tickets for sports, comedy, theater, etc. Go check it out. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use that code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem that code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out with us on Locked On NBA, being part of the show, being an everydayer, listening to the show. We've got a daily show that covers your team or the NBA draft. Locked On NBA Big Board. Go check out that show with Richard Stayman, Leaf Tulane, James Barlow doing some great stuff over there. While Rafael Barlow takes care of some family stuff. Check the link in the description to find a show that covers your team every day. All right, Pat. All right, Richard. We're here talking about the NBA draft, and the Wizards made a lot of noise. I don't know how much they changed their team or affected with their bottom line or anything, but they made a lot of noise. First of all, they traded Deni Avdija. They trade him to Portland. Portland gets Deni Avdija. The Wizards get Malcolm Brogdon. They got the 14th pick, which turned into Bub Carrington, which Richard already talked about. He kind of liked. They also get a 2029 first-round pick, and they get 2 second-round picks from the Wizards as well. Pat, did the Wizards make the right choice in trading Deni Avdija after just giving an extension not that long ago, but getting basically 2 firsts, 2 seconds, and then taking on Brogdon's contract, and maybe they get something out of him on day 2?
I mean, listen, I'm not overvaluing Deni Avdija because he had a breakout season on a terrible team that finally told him, hey, it's okay for you to shoot because nobody else is really good at doing it. I'm not losing my mind over any move made by arguably one of the worst franchise. Like, here's the thing that I will say. Maybe Deni Avdija gets better now that he's not a part of the Washington Wizards. Like, we're talking about one of the worst run franchises in sports history. I don't know the last time they were relevant. Our John Wall said, probably the greatest Wizard of all time, and I couldn't debate with him, and I think the best team he ever had was a 5th seed. So, like, to me, yeah, I guess they made moves today, and maybe Deni Avdija gets the benefit from not being on one of the worst run franchises in sports history, but I don't think that they did anything that impacts future winning. I don't think that they did anything that turns the tide for this Washington Wizards team. In fact, like, I think you've reset your timeline, which is fine, right? You want to reset the timeline and get young pieces in here. Fine, let's do it. That's the path you're going to go. But I think you've just reset your timeline to further the process of the exact thing you were trying to do by bringing in young pieces and not reset the timeline.
Let me tell you, the leaving Washington thing really helped Daniel Gafford as someone that covers the Mavericks. worked for him. It also worked for Dinwiddie the year before that when he left the Wizards and joined the Mavericks.
When you're a poorly run organization, it goes all the way through.
Richard, were you down for them kind of like selling high on Deni Avdija at this point in his career?
Well, I'll add one more. Porzingis too. He just won a championship right after leaving. So I'll just throw. I'll say this though, as
he played 2 2.5 games in the finals
and got better.
He actually got better in Washington. I'll give the Wizards some credit because they gave him the opportunities to post up and do that kind of stuff, and he wasn't good at that in Dallas at all. But them getting Deni, like the Blazers getting Deni Avdija, though, I think it's a good like buy low. He's younger than some of the players in this draft, Richard.
Yeah, I think it was a good pickup by Portland. Here's my thing. So I say this as DC's newest resident. So I'm basically Wizards draft at this point. I think my take is I think the tank race is going to be super strong next year. The top is very heavy. It is Ace Bailey, Cooper Flag. There's several others that should be in the number 1 pick. Like I think there are about 8 players from next year's draft that would have been safely number 1 at the same point next year of this year's class. So a lot of
teams
said 8. There's probably 8. I would say, it's a really good class. So I think that's a big part of it. Is they're willing to say, you know what, if we can get Ace Bailey or Cooper Flag next year, it's better than having Deni Avdija next year, the year after, when they're better. And it just furthers the tank race. But I actually like what Washington did tonight, personally.
What the Alex Sarr pick? So he goes number 2 overall. He skipped a workout with the Hawks. He did not want to go to the Hawks. It seemed like he was ready to go. Even though he followed DeJounte Murray and Trae Young on Instagram, like, and people were posting that, like, oh, is he going to change it? But what are they getting in Alex Sarr, and why is he a good pick for you?
Yeah, Alex Sarr is my number 1 prospect. So whenever you can get number 1 and number 2, it's a pretty good deal. With Alex Sarr, his archetype is just the best combination of high floor, high ceiling. He's potentially rim running as his bare minimum. He can stretch the floor. He can protect the rim. There's some passing there, I think, as well. Just look at that archetype. It really doesn't fail. Like, I feel like his median outcome is the starting center, like an average starting center. That's a really good player. And his ceiling is being, what DeAndre Ayton could be at this point, like his best case for the foreseeable future. I think you get a good player there with a much better motor.
Let me ask you this, Richard, do you feel like Alex Sarr is the kind of player that you can build a team around, or is he just a solid player that could be a part of the team that just so happen to be best case scenario in this draft, like you said, and hope for the best in the tank next year?
Yeah, I mean, the way I've seen the Wizards they have such a fascinating vision ahead of them because they're bad for what's in the next 2 classes are ridiculous. I think Alex Sarr is that guy where you don't want him as your first option, but if you have a superstar, he's going to complement them very well.
Yeah, he's like the who can we compare him to in some of the, like, I guess like a Lou Dort. When you get Lou Dort and you're like, oh, he's just gonna hang around OKC for a while, and eventually SGA will show up and Jalen will show up and Chet will show up, and now he looks like a really good piece next to those guys.
Yeah. The DeAndre Ayton comparison I thought was pretty apt. Hopefully a better motor than DeAndre Ayton. And it snows a little bit more in Washington, so maybe he'll get to the games. But I do think that that's a good comparison because DeAndre Ayton without Devin Booker and Chris Paul looks a lot different.
The Wizards also get Bub Carrington. Richard, you like that pick, and then they get Keyshawn George. What are they getting in those 2 guys?
Yeah, with Bub Carrington, I mean, that entire draft, here's how I kind of view it is you get the pick and roll ball handler, you have the pick and pop and pick and roll threat in Alex Sarr. Then you have the skip pass option in Keyshawn George. That is ridiculously confusing with Keontae George around. Right. I've tripped over that for the last year. But with Keyshawn George, you get a really good shooter. He's not very athletic, really smart player, though. And I think there is something to be said for smart shooters with size at 6'7". He'll be 21 within his first 30 games of the season. It's kind of a weird thing for a freshman. But with Bub Carrington, you're getting an 18-year-old who can handle the ball, scored all 3 levels, run a pick and roll, has good athleticism. Just, again, that 3-level scoring that can run a pick and roll and make everyone better. That's what you want as a lottery pick.
Is Kuzma just like gonna just be a tank commander? Like, is that what he wants? He decided not to go to the Mavericks in a trade last year. He turned that one down at the trade deadline. But is Kuzma just gonna be a tank commander now for all these guys? Like, he's the vet they're all looking to.
I mean, he has to be. Like, it's him or Poole. I don't think you can. I don't think you can enter next season with both of those guys. And at this point, Kuzma has something where teams want him. Like, he's won the championship obviously Poole has too, but like Kuzma, I would say his role in 2020 is a little bit more coveted at this point than Jordan Poole's. Like, I just feel like his value is higher. if you have to roll with one and you're getting a team commander, probably Jordan Poole. It's a tough conversation to have.
One of them got punched in the face, the other one didn't. So, I don't know. That's just a weird spot for those two guys to be in at this point, to now be the
fact that we got the report that the punch from the face team kind of wants him back, though. It's like we're trying over here. We'll take Jordan Poole back. Like, wait a minute.
Listen, Jordan, we're better now. We went to therapy.
We all went to therapy. I saw him choke out.
I've been investing in myself.
No, I've been putting him in therapy. He's fine.
I've taken many mental health days. You guys just didn't make the playoffs. They're not mental health days. That's why. Coming up, let's play where we count on the most interesting, fun things in the NBA, including OG Anunoby gets paid a ton of money. Is it worth it? And Rob Pelinka continues to give us Rob Pelinka-isms. Talk about all that and more coming up. All right, guys, that time of the week, we're talking about the most interesting, fun things in the NBA. It's our segment that we like to call Count It Up, where we...
Big chicken, baby. Zion Williams and porn star. Take that back.
Count it up. 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 OG Anunoby, according to Adrian Wojnarowski, intends to sign a 5-year, hold on to your butts, $212 million contract to return to the New York Knicks, according to ESPN. Deal will include a player option and a trade kicker. The Knicks, with 2 moves for Mikal Bridges, all those picks they traded, and for OG Anunoby. To get those guys, they were held over a barrel with some of these moves. But now they have a great collection of talent. But my question is, how much is too much for a player that's never going to make an all-star team?
I mean, listen, I guess the question on how much is too much makes a big difference when you see how all in the Knicks are. For me, how much they paid OG Anunoby is too much. But when you go out and you get Mikal Bridges and you give up as much as you gave up for Mikal Bridges, you're expecting to be competing for a championship next season. You're not expecting to be competing for a championship 3 years into OG Anunoby's contract. When you look at it from that lens, while I still think it is a massive contract for a guy that I think is way too offensively inconsistent, I think that this fits the Knicks timeline, and it would have been tough for you to let him just walk away for nothing.
Too much for this, Rich? Too rich? Rich?
Too rich for rich. I mean, it's never comfortable giving, I feel like, $212 million to somebody who's not he's a bona fide role player. But
I know that feeling.
What'd you say?
I said, I know that feeling.
I think
lockdown bullets, Pat the designer. Look, everyone,
I'm a big OG fan. I think he is that kind of guy that wins you playoff games a lot. And look, if you can get to that point where you need that player, it's probably worth it. I just feel like still the Knicks score is probably topped out at maybe a finals appearance. I just don't know if they can win a championship with what they've got.
Yeah, to me, I don't think it was too much. It seems crazy. Average of $42 million a year. It rises, and so it starts at 36. And it's probably going to go to like 45, 48 by the end of it. But they could do this because Mikal Bridges, who they just traded for, is making $23 million. Brunson is only making about 25 next year, and so they could pay for this. Like they could go do that. And I don't think it was necessarily too much. It was what they had to do. They had to do this in order to keep him. And now all of a sudden they have a team that can at least compete with the Boston Celtics. I know that if you're a Boston Celtics fan and you're listening to this, no one can compete with us. No one can even touch us. We're the greatest team that's ever been assembled. I get that. I just went through that in the NBA finals. I was there. Were you there? No, I was there. I listened to all of your fans the whole time. But the Knicks now can. We won one game. The Mavericks won one game. They got one. They were up by 48 in that game. Also, did you hear Deuce Tatum in the locker room after game 3?
Yes.
Everyone's sitting around, and all the Celtics are sitting around in a circle, and Deuce goes, "We almost lost." And Tatum's like, "Shut up." Don't say but I think this OG Anunoby deal, it looks like a ton. The sticker shock is insane for this, but they had to do it. And they kept this team together, and now they have a really great assembled team. And yes, Tom Thibodeau is going to test the limits of the human body with Mikal Bridges with his Iron Man streak that he has.
You also have to take into account with the new cap and how things are styled up, right? This is only about 20% of the cap. It's not him eating up a massive amount of all
26,
of your team's
26.
26% of the cap. Yeah, it's doable with the contracts that you've already got in place, but you're going to have to restructure some guys by the end of it.
According to Johan Buha, he tweeted this out after the Lakers made the pick of Dalton Connect. Rob Pelinka said Coach JJ Redick immediately began drawing up pin downs and ATO sets on a whiteboard for Connect next season. Pat, my question is, cap or no cap that JJ Redick pulled out a whiteboard and started to draw up pin downs and ATOs for Dalton Connect next year?
Here's the wild part about this. I'm going no cap. This sounds
no, you think he's just sitting at home?
This
pulls
sounds
out a whiteboard?
Exactly like JJ Redick. This sounds exact. Remember, like watching I don't know how many of the Bron podcasts you guys watch, but a clipboard was always nearby. It was never too far away. So I think this is absolutely something JJ Redick would do. And he just started cursing when Rob Pelinka called him to like show him the plays. Listen here, mother. Wait a minute, JJ. We're drafting right now.
Richard, cap or no cap? JJ Redick actually pulled out a
that
whiteboard.
board again. I need to see that NBA court again.
Yeah, what was that play? What was that play you threw?
What happened to the court is my question. You the free throw line was above the 3-point line. I need all the answers.
Listen, we're talking about high concept plays here that I'm drawing up over here.
The only way that could have been more of a lie would have been if LeBron said it at a commercial break. That is literally the only way. Like, no, there's no way that happened. Like, I don't think even the biggest basketball nerd alive would have done that. And Redick is close. Nah, that's a lie. That's cap.
Hey, I guarantee you that play will be inside of the first page of a book that LeBron James will be reading every game during next season. I guarantee that we will see that play. He never makes it to page 2. Is anybody else wonder about that, bro? He's never.
He has to read the acknowledgments first
He
in the forward.
Down reading Malcolm X's book of quotes. And he was on page 1. It said, "What's your favorite quote?" So many. What? What? Give me one.
Last one. The Wizards take Zach Edey. Not the Wizards. The Grizzlies take Zach Edey. The West Wizards. The Grizzlies take Zach Edey and John Morant on his Instagram. Post the scene from Rush Hour where the Giant shows up at the door. And Chris Tucker goes there and goes, damn. My question is, if you're Zach Edey, how do you respond to that when you first see John Morant?
I'm the only one that can say it because I've seen Rush Hour.
Wait, John, hold on.
If either of you guys say it, you'll get in trouble. He has to walk in and immediately laugh and go, funny black man. That's what he said in the movie. That's what he said in the movie. That's what he says when he starts fighting Chris Tucker in the movie. Oh, God. I love John Morant for this dunk. That was phenomenal. Like that's
cracking up.
That's
cracking up.
Comedic timing by John Morant. Like just to have that on hand, amazing.
Over under 3 days into training camp when we see John Morant try a piggyback ride on Zach Edey.
Oh my God, under by a mile. Yeah, that should be minus 1,000.
Day one, he's just going.
I'll does a piggyback ride count as him trying to dunk on Zach Edey? Because I do.
Oh yeah, when are we gonna see that? And John will post it.
A little welcome to the NBA moment. The 6'1" guy jumps over your head and dunks on you with one arm that's longer than the other.
He hasn't been playing for a while, so one arm longer than the other.
Oh, you didn't know that?
Space Jam? Did he turn into Space Jam?
No, he's literally got one arm longer than the other.
That would affect your shot. Did you know this when you were scouting him, Richard?
This is news to me 5 years later.
I think it's his left arm. His left arm is longer than his right arm, and he says like that's my steal arm. So like when I go for steals, I know I can poke the ball free because that arm's longer.
Dang, I'm measuring my own arms now. Now I'm looking at mine. I'm like, seeing if that applies to me.
The NBA career is over, Richard.
There's one video. There's one video where he says this, and it just gets posted over and over again. And he's just holding his arms up in front of himself like this. It like you can't You can't really measure him that way.
It's him talking about it. I didn't say it. I didn't make it up.
Oh, and John Morant has never lied to us about anything.
Not here for John Morant slander. You're not gonna do this. He just dropped.
Neither is Zach Edey. Neither is Zach Edey, and he'll get dunked on in training camp probably from them. Let's do last one. Jared McCain gets taken by the Philadelphia 76ers. When ESPN starts showing his highlights, they also start showing his TikToks. My question is, are you in or out on the TikToks being played during the highlights of a player? Would you feel insulted, or would you feel like flattered that they're showing that during your highlights?
I'm not out on the TikTok. It was weird though. Like they also didn't list any of his NBA stats. They said like his followers on Instagram and TikTok. Like
which are a lot.
They gave no numbers on the guy, no breakdown on his game. They didn't say anything about how he's going to be as a player, how he fits. They were like, look at him dancing. Sometimes he wears a bonnet.
I'm 2 days into college and I'm 3. Richard, you're out on this?
Well, it's funny. On my scouting report, I literally just finished yesterday, and I remember I put an entire paragraph just for his dancing. That's, to me, that's intangibles. Like you can't.
Does it show lateral quickness?
Yeah, it's lateral quickness. Exactly. No, I think it's dumb. It is they completely ignore. They're like, hey, this basketball guy plays like he's a TikToker. Did you know that? And then they're like, let's just talk nothing about basketball. And then they showed all of his moves. Nah, maybe I'm just getting old, but no, I thought that was weird.
I mean, listen, as somebody who is in a city that just drafted Caleb Williams, at least with Caleb, they showed the football highlights. And then we're also like, he also goes to like GQ magazine on weekends, like show the sports stuff. Like he's a pretty good basketball player. That's the part that's funny about it. I'd get it if it was like one of the Wizards picks or something like that. Like he's not a bad player.
Either of the Wizards guys.
Yeah, we'll see. They haven't joined the Wizards organization just yet. It's like the Bulls organization. We signed shooters.
At what point do you think the Wizards stink gets on them? When they put the jersey on, when they get drafted, or when they play a game?
I think it's usually 10 games into the season, because we've seen a lot of high moments like early on, and then it just falls off. It's like remember last year it was like Jordan Poole and Kyle Kuzma and Tyus Jones. It was like, oh, maybe this will work. Maybe they fooled us. Oh, no, they didn't. Didn't
they start like 10-3 2 years ago or something like that?
That sounds right. I mean, all this year they would win the first quarter for the first 7 minutes, and then they would be down by 5 at the end of the first quarter. So. I mean, it kind of they make sense if that was the case.
So Richard's saying by the second quarter, he's not even giving them 10 games. He's like, no, first quarter's fine. By the second quarter, full on Wizards.
If you're offended by this Wizard slander, go listen to Locked On Wizards. He'll talk about the actual team and the actual players.
If you're offended by this Wizard slander, what are we talking about good here? It's the Wizards. I'm a Bulls fan, and even I can stand on that. Come on now.
Go check out Locked On Bulls with Pat and Hayes. Go check out Locked On Mavs. We'll talk about that the Mavs did nothing today. And go to listen to Locked On NBA Big Board with Richard Stayman and Leif Tulane and James Barlow. Guys, thanks for listening to Locked On NBA.
Bang, bang.
Boom.